There's a wideness in God's mercy, like the wideness of the sea. There's a kindness in God's justice, which is more than liberty. The homily this morning will be short, concise, and to the point, because you will be listening to my voice for a long enough period of time during the annual meeting directly following this service of Holy Eucharist this morning. You will be happy to know that I have drastically shortened the usual time for sermon remarks into a brief homily. Unless you have been living under a rock for the past week, you are most likely aware of the chaos and clowns parading in the nation's capital and calling themselves a functioning government. I am severely restraining myself and will move from my disdain of the current occupant of the West Wing to the topic I am certain is being mentioned in many Episcopal churches in the United States on this third Sunday after Epiphany. The Right Reverend Marianne Edgar Buddy is the Bishop Diocesan for the Diocese of Washington, elected and consecrated to that position in November of 2011 at the Cathedral Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, more commonly known as the National Cathedral, which is in our faith tradition where her seat, or cathedra, is held. In that role, Bishop Buddy gave the homily at the interfaith prayer service held at the National Cathedral the day after the 34 times convicted felon was inaugurated. Oh, and then did the proverbial stuff hit the fan. I would point out that Marianne Edgar grew up in Flanders, New Jersey, which is the next town over from where yours truly grew up. And we shared time in community theater together at Pax Abacus Theater in Flanders, New Jersey. Seriously, we were theater buddies. Much has been spoken, written, and posted about the bishop's remarks, and I will not go into great detail about them, except to say that she called on arguably the most powerful politician in the free world to show mercy to those who are currently at great risk in the hands of the current political leadership of our nation. Those of you who are aware of my presence on the social media platform of Facebook know that my postings are generally birthday and anniversary greetings to my very, very large family, or memes of evening and night prayers. You would also be aware of the words of my spiritual mentors and models, Richard Rohr, Mary Oliver, Annie Lamott, or Stephen Charleston, for example, that I frequently repost. I want to share some of the words penned by one of those spiritual mentors, John Pavlovitz, that he wrote yesterday, entitled, "Sometimes What Seems Like Reality is Just Volume." John writes, "The loud people get to write the story that everyone hears, the one they come to believe is the only story. In this way, they get to divine what is true for those looking on who may not hear anything else. Right now, there is a story being written about Christians in America, a story saturated with cruelty and absent of compassion. And because the author's noise is so great and profile so high, that is becoming the singular story. It is becoming true for all of us. But that is not our story. There is another story. There is a different kind of Christian than those trafficking in cruelty. We are such people. We are Christians who believe a faith without mercy and empathy is fraudulent, heretical, and devoid of Jesus. We have no tolerance for bigotry that denies the inherent worth of a human based on their identity, or gender, or pigmentation, or orientation, especially when it commandeers the name of Jesus to do it. Dehumanizing language would be a foreign tongue to him, threat of violence toward others unthinkable, coordinated bullying, and abomination. We recognize that virtually nothing about this administration resembles Jesus of Nazareth, and we reject any claim that he would sanction the expelling of immigrants, the rejection of refugees, or the walling off of foreign neighbors. These things are the antithesis of the open-hearted gospel of welcome and care for the other. We see the white supremacy and fascism currently being championed from the Oval Office in evangelical pulpits and through partisan extremist media, and we will fight any effort to normalize it because such hatred has no business being spoken in the same breath as Jesus, who preached peace. We believe that all human beings are beautifully made in the image of God, female, male, transgender, non-binary, non-conforming alike, that gender identity and sexual orientation are diverse and expansive expressions of their Creator without exception. We believe separating children from their parents and violently disconnecting families to be among the greatest of this world's evils, that they are the antithesis of the compassionate heart of the Jesus of the Gospels. We see in the scriptures Jesus' clear disdain for religious hypocrisy, those who leverage their positions and others' fear of God in order to victimize people. We reject the extremists of the Christian right who would build a theocracy here and coerce people into compliance, because the heart of this and all faiths is free decision. We affirm the rights of women to have sovereignty over their own bodies, and we oppose men who would assert their preferences, prejudices, or religious beliefs upon them, whether individually or corporately, through personal conduct or legislation. We have read and studied the Bible, and we know when someone is twisting it to their advantage, when they are distorting it to oppress and discriminate, when they are making God in their own angry image. And we believe this is happening more egregiously than ever in America, in the highest levels of government and church leadership. We denounce the violence, misogyny, and nationalism characterizing American evangelical Christianity, as it bears no commonality with a Jesus whose life and ministry were marked by diversity, compassion, and radical hospitality to the outsider. We are not defined by solely any Christian denomination, category, or movement. We are not merely evangelical or mainline, charismatic, or contemplative. Our convictions and declarations transcend political party, and they are bigger than one politician. They are a Christianity of fierce, loving resistance to fear, to patriarchy, to exclusion, to nationalism, to white supremacy, to power, to isolationism. You may not realize that such Christians still exist anymore. In fact, on many days, we begin to feel as though we are a terribly endangered species too. That perhaps we are alone in these days, but that is merely the number of the other story. Writers trying to dishearten us. Make no mistake though, we number in the tens of millions, and we are as grieved as you are by those using God to do damage to the poor and the vulnerable. We're committed to pushing back against it. So yes, there is certainly a loud and quite terrible story being written by people professing faith in Jesus right now, one that seems preoccupied with making the table smaller, with pushing difference to the periphery, with dispensing damnation, and with marginalizing those already at disadvantage. There is indeed a Christian voice of misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, and bigotry that has had the megaphone and the platform right now, and we refuse to let it speak for us. We are Christians of empathy and hospitality and diversity, fully committed to making a nation that can be sanctuary and refuge for everyone who desires it, a nation where compliance with one faith tradition is not a mandatory requirement for admission, one whose burden is to build bigger tables, not higher walls. We are Christians, actively, relentlessly, and fully resisting hatred, and we're not going away. Blessed are the merciful. Amen.